Hello, SpongicX here, and I am going to talk about the Animaniacs reboot on Hulu. So, I just spent like the past 7 hours just binging all 13 episodes of season 1, and coming from a guy who absolutely hates reboots, I loved this reboot. I mean, there have been so many reboots in the past that I just frowned upon or absolutely hated. I did not care for the Looney Tunes show, I hated Teen Titans Go, did not care for the Powerpuff Girls reboot, and it's like the only reboots that came out recently that I actually did enjoy were DuckTales and um, Looney Tunes cartoons on HBO Max. So when I heard they were rebooting Animaniacs, I was both excited but nervous at the same time. I was hoping this would be the reboot that is so different from the others. While, changing for a new audience, it still, remembers where it came from, and that's exactly what we got with this reboot. Now, Animaniacs basically was a modern day Looney Tunes, but with more pop culture references and basically the birth of meta humor, and heck, even the new intro of the show even pokes fun at that. And so I've seen some people complaining about this reboot though, because they think it's doing too much modern day humor, and it's like, hello, that's exactly what the show was for those who grew up in the 90s. It was making fun of the 90s, basically, and that's exactly what this new show is doing. But luckily it relies on more than just, making Trump jokes or all of that. But yeah, the show definitely has its fill of that, and as one who's absolutely sick of political jokes, I thought this show had some pretty good political humor occasionally. Maybe it did have a little too much of it. A few too many segments were a little political, so but for the most part, sometimes when it made political jokes, they were pretty funny. And yeah, I really enjoyed this show overall. Does it feel entirely like the original show? That's a little hard to say. This show definitely has some differences, though. So you could definitely say the first one had a lot of stuff that could be considered sexist and I don't know. I strongly disagree with that, though. So yeah, in the original show, you saw moments where like the male characters would go cuckoo over seeing a pretty lady or something. Very cartoony reactions, and but what made it so funny though was how they made fun of it though. So you'd see like Yakko and Wacko, they would get crazy over seeing the character Hello Nurse, but then so Dot, their sister, would stand by the side, roll her eyes, and say boys, but then all of a sudden she'd see a hot guy and go crazy over him. And so I liked how they poked fun at that. They showed that women aren't different from men. It's like even they have their hypocritical moments, or they're just like guys in a way. It's like guys get attracted over something, and women are the same way. And so apparently they don't consider that humor politically correct nowadays, despite the fact how it technically is. And so I don't know. I just felt like it was role reversed here. It's like now they can't show anything sexual with women, but it's okay to show sexual men, I get. I mean, God, there's a whole episode where you have a guy just running around in panties throughout the entire episode, and it's like, okay, Hello Nurse isn't acceptable, but this is? Okay? But other than that, though, the show does have a TV PG rating, so in a way it still does have that immature humor that the show was originally known for. It had a lot of dirty jokes that only adults would get. I mean, you especially knew they intentionally meant to tell a dirty joke when Yakko would blow a kiss and say, "Good night, everybody," and this show still has those moments in there. And so, yeah, one complaint some people might have had with this new reboot, though, is a lot of the original characters from the original show are missing. And to me, that didn't bug me that much, though, because personally, I only watch Animaniacs for the Warners anyways. Yakko, Wacko, and Dot. I really didn't care for the other characters that much, with the exceptions being like Slappy Squirrel, and occasionally I did get a laugh out of Pinky and the Brain, but so Pinky and the Brain are the only other characters who return in the show prominently, and a part of me just felt like it wasn't necessary. I mean, I did like the first new episode they had of Pinky and the Brain, but I thought Pinky and the Brain had some of the most boring segments, not only in the original show, but even in this one. I mean, they even got their own TV series, so they lasted longer than the original Animaniacs, so I just felt it was a little forced seeing them brought back into this show. I mean, one minute you're just laughing at seeing what the Warners are up to, and you're wondering what they're going to be up to next, but then you're forced to watch a Pinky and the Brain skit, and so on the bright side, though, you get less of that It's like the first show was always full of that. It's like one minute you think you're gonna watch an episode of the Warners, but then it forces you to watch an episode of the Good Feathers or Minerva Mink, or just they force all these random characters out of nowhere. And so while the show got rid of a bunch of the old characters, they did try forcing in some new ones, but it seems like they were exclusive to just one skit or something. And the new characters they introduced weren't that great. I mean, some of them didn't even feel like they belonged in Animaniacs. I mean, there's one that felt like it came straight from a Ren and Stimpy episode. There's one where the gimmick is an angry lawn gnome bursts out of people's mouths. That's it. And it's like, this does not feel like it belongs in Animaniacs. And so, yeah, some of the new segments weren't that great, but luckily there were not a whole lot of them. There were only like 3 I can think of. The third one wasn't too bad, and it was using the Halloween episode, and it was just a parody of some of those specials that you have seen Vincent Price narrate, and creatures that go bump in the night, and it's just nothing but literally monsters walking around the dark and they're bumping into things. I don't know why. I just liked it, though. It was short and simple, but it just got a laugh out of me, and I like how it used a unique art style, and that's another thing that's really great about this show. The original show had some criticism, just like the original Tiny Toons, where you could definitely tell each episode was animated by a different studio or something, and that could get pretty distracting. How one episode the characters look more polished and fluid, and the next they look real choppy and kind of badly animated. So this show, while it does have different animators for certain scenes, though, I like how they do a better job at disguising it. So, most of all, the show does carry a very consistent art style. The characters usually look the same in each episode, but they don't look stiff like an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon. They still, have, well, I can't say they're as well animated as they were in the original show. They definitely look a little more colorful, though, and they're more in character in this. But they still have very good animation compared to most other reboots where they make everything look too flat and limited. The characters still have dimensions to them. So there are times where the animation can look really good, and then there are times where it can look a little limited. But overall, it's really good for a reboot. Very good for this modern age. So surprisingly, you might remember some of those promos that Hulu made for this show, like the Jurassic Park parody, the Poltergeist parody they released around Halloween, or even the sellout ad where they mocked about like reboots and how they're total sellouts, but meanwhile it shows them getting a bunch of money from Hulu. And so you think those would have just been for promotional purposes, and no, those were all actually used in episodes from the show. They actually were previews of the show, and that surprised me, because usually you see a lot of promotional trailers, like from Pixar movies or something, and a lot of the stuff you see in those did not make it into the final film. And so it was surprising to see all those scenes that felt like they were just for commercial purposes, and they actually were parts of episodes. In fact, 2 of those clips I mentioned were actually from the first episode, the Jurassic Park and the sellout bit. And so the first episode was a pretty good start for the show. I did get a really good laugh out of it. It put a big smile on my face to see the show open up with the Jurassic Park parody, followed by the new reinvented theme song for the show, and it really heavily took the original theme song and tried creating it while updating it to, omit the original characters, but then include the new ones and stuff like that. And it still has that zany, fast-paced lyrics and humor, and it still has the live orchestration, and it sounds very faithful to the original. I mean, it almost feels like the original composer never left us, and yeah, they did a really good job with the music. And there are some episodes that definitely feel like they could have been part of the original Animaniacs, but then there are definitely some where it feels like, yeah, you can tell this was made by some new writers. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the show definitely doesn't feel entirely like the original. I mean, there definitely is some more reliance on gross-out humor in some of these. I wouldn't say it's the worst, though. I mean, the original Animaniacs had occasional bits of gross-out humor, but so this new series, it definitely has a little more gross-out humor. And like I mentioned earlier, unlike the original, which was TVY7, this one is given a TV PG rating, so they're still able to get away with some of that risque humor. Heck, the characters even swear a few times. It's like nothing drastic, though. It's just like you'll see Brain or Wacko saying the word hell. Yeah, like it's still a family show, though. It's just that occasionally it has some humor strictly made for the adults, but that's pretty much what the original was, except now they're not forced to Back then the writers complained about how Fox wanted them to include educational segments. And so there are still some educational segments in the show, but they felt like they're made for fun this time. They don't feel like they were forcibly made because Fox wanted them to. It felt like they were made because the writers knew that was a staple of the original, and they wanted. So they sneak in some more sneakier innuendos in these educational songs, and some of them can definitely throw you through a loop. Though it's like at first I thought like I was gonna hate the song, but then it leads to something completely different. And so like one example is in episode 2. Like I'd say this was a really standout moment in the show. So it starts off feeling like a real cringy political song where Dot wants to force in a message on how women now have the right to vote, and so it's one of those forced political messages. And it's like at first I was rolling my eyes, like, "Are you kidding me? We're really doing this?" It's like, we get it, you're politically correct now and all that, and so you think you're gonna be forced to endure a song like that, but then all of a sudden you see like as Dot is rallying in a bunch of women to join by her side and fight for the right to vote and all that. You see like some of them whispering into her ear, and they inform her that cartoons don't have the right to vote. So this triggers her, and she changes the song to be a song about having cartoons having the right to vote. And this part was a real visual treat. You just see her bring in a bunch of Easter eggs and cameos from different cartoon characters that obviously are owned under Time Warner. So you'll not only see Looney Tunes, which were pretty expected, but you'll even see Hanna-Barbera characters, and they even threw in Babs and Buster Bunny from Tiny Toons, and even the Lunatics Unleashed get made fun of here. And so it was just really funny how this started off as a political jab. It was making fun of, like a political activist and all that, but then all of a sudden it turns into, it goes from Dot, singing a song about feminism and, women voting to all of a sudden getting triggered and then rallying up her toon brethren and making a new song. I don't know, I just got a laugh out of that, and it was just so bizarre. And I remember like seeing in the trailer, you saw like the part where it showed the Warners surrounded by Hanna-Barbera characters, and I was wondering, what's the context of this? And so it's funny how it was the ending segment in episode 2. And so like episode 1 basically is what one of the first trailers basically teased at. It was where the Warners come back after like 22 years, and they have to relearn everything. So Yakko, he swallows a tablet and somehow learns everything that happened the past 22 years at least. And so he then sings a song educating his siblings about all the stuff they missed out on. And so that sets up the new premise for the show, basically. And so the second skit is a Pinky and the Brain skit where it also reveals, similarly to the opening of the Invader Zim movie, Enter the Florpus, this one reveals that Brain has been planning all along, but it took him like 22 years to finally have it come into action. And so he's been waiting for the perfect time for the internet to become more mainstream, basically, and so he could find a way to take it over. So his new plan is to basically become a viral sensation. He realizes that animals are very popular on the internet, and so he wants to make a video of himself so he can spread it across the world and basically hypnotize the world and leading him into taking over the world and all that. And so same old shtick of him trying to take over the world and failing miserably, usually because of something Pinky does. And but yeah, it was pretty funny though. I did like it. That was probably my favorite out of the Pinky and the Brain skits in this. And might I say, the new opening for this was amazing. I loved the animation style during this, and it was really cool. But at the same time, it makes me wonder, why didn't they just make a separate show for Pinky and the Brain and make this new show focus on the Warners? So you're probably wondering though, what happened to the other characters? Well, they explained it in episode 5, and at first, it almost felt like a really dark episode. So major spoilers ahead, but so at first it made it feel like they killed off the characters, because we're introduced to a new villain who's, we'll just call him the Hunter, I guess, or as Dot called him, she called him a poor man's Elmer Fudd. So we're introduced to like it shows the Warners, they're running out of ideas. I mean, 5 episodes in and they already don't know what to do, and they point out how they've been taking over the slot for the show, and then they're wondering what happened to all the old characters they used to be surrounded by. And Then we're cut to this hunter, and he collects cartoon characters. And he doesn't just collect them, though. He apparently hunts them down. It's implied that he mounted their heads on walls and stuff like that. And it's made even darker in a later part in the episode where the characters actually stumble upon it and they see all the previous characters hung as trophies, and they look lifeless too. And I was like, did they really go there? Did they really say they killed off these characters? And I almost fell for it, but I was like thinking, like, there's no way they actually killed them off. And yeah, the ending basically confirmed they're still alive. And so after this episode, it still doesn't explain why they didn't return for the rest of the show, though. But it does confirm that the characters are still alive, though. But what really made this twist funny was who was responsible for getting rid of these characters and why. So the hunter was actually another character in disguise, and it was Chicken Boo. And so he got jealous out of all the success of the other characters. And so when he found out he wasn't going to be in the reboot, he made sure the others wouldn't be in the reboot either. And so, yeah, it makes you wonder if in season 2 we'll see more of these characters. And it's like, so practically, everyone had the thoughts that every character from the original show was not going to make a return in this. And so far, we've seen returns from, like, every character in the show except for Hello Nurse and, what was his name? Potts or whatever, their boss, the head of Warner Bros. Animation or whatever. He does make a picture cameo in this, but I don't recall seeing him actually appear. And, Dr. Scratch and Sniff, while he shows up in the opening of the show briefly, and he even makes an appearance as a main character in the final episode of the season, which had a pretty funny twist at the end. I'm not going to spoil that one, though, but the final episode was a little underwhelming to me, though. I mean, I thought the return of Dr. Scratch and Sniff was really fine, and I liked the twist at the end. But then the Pinky and the Brain episode that followed by the last skit we see before we have to wait for this hiatus for the show to return, was pretty underwhelming. Well, the second part of the final episode was a really drawn-out segment of Pinky and the Brain where they're trapped in an automatic car, and so it eventually comes to a point where the characters reveal their origin stories, basically. So, we explain why Brain basically turned evil and all that. And it's like, that was pretty much self-explanatory, though. I mean, we really didn't need to have that revealed. I mean, spoiler alert, he was a tortured lab rat ever since he was a little kid, and it gave him a distrust on humanity. And it's like, yeah, that was kind of predictable. I mean, he's a lab rat, for crying out loud. I mean, that was pretty predictable. As soon as you saw him wanting to take over the world, you didn't question. You knew why. He was a lab rat. He was forcibly experimented by humans. So, of course, he'd want to take over the world. It did give a funny little contrast on Pinky's perspective, though. He made it sound like his life was really tragic, with his experiments. But you find out his was the complete opposite. He was a spoiled lab rat, actually. And so... but it definitely does paint a better contrast on why Brain is so evil and why Pinky's just so obliviously happy. And yeah, if anything, it gave a better explanation for Pinky's origin, aside from him just being stupid, it gives a better understanding for why Brain is so bitter compared to him. And speaking of Brain, I definitely say they made Brain a little more evil in this show, though. I mean, it's definitely prominent in the episode where he forcibly mutated a female lab rat, and they tried portraying her like a parody of Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that's already dated, but the show did mention the first episode that some of their jokes might end up being dated because they wrote a lot of this stuff back in 2018, and so they don't know the outcome. So they don't know that Trump miserably lost, but they still, if you're a fan of Trump, do not watch this show because they tear him and his supporters a new one. And oh god, I was laughing all the way though. So yeah, there's one episode where Brain, he basically makes a Hillary Clinton parody of a lab rat, and it's like the way he's mind controlling her is kind of hard to watch at certain scenes though. He's definitely a little more evil in this, but he still cares for Pinky though, just like in the original show. There are definitely episodes where they show that he still cares a lot about Pinky to the point where he'll even stop what he's doing to save his life or something. So it's nice to see that he's still a true friend to Pinky despite all the abuse and stuff like that. But one episode I definitely enjoyed was the one where they're invaded by bunnies. There's just this madman who moves into the Warner's movie lot, and he's obsessed with rabbits. He loves breeding them, and So he's just polluting the Warner lot with all these cute little bunnies that keep multiplying, and the Warners are getting sick of it, and so they try getting rid of the man responsible. And so this is where that epic and funny looking anime scene came from, where you saw like the characters as anime action heroes basically, and so you get like this action packed and humorous fight scene, and I was just laughing all the way, and I just love the animation. It felt like something straight from Kill La Kill. Um, and that's not the only kind of anime inspired episode we get. There's another one where it starts off kind of, it starts off gross, gets a little cutesy, but then gets even grosser at the end. And I thought this was a pretty funny episode, though. So there's an episode where Dot is just like looking around the world, and she's just sickened with it. She thinks everything is disgusting, and for some reason she eats like this cute looking cupcake, and all of a sudden it turns her into a chibi kawaii version of herself, and she's suddenly gifted with the powers to make anything cute. Everything Dot sees turns cute in the process. So all of a sudden, the whole world turns into like a giant K-pop video. And so at first, everyone's enjoying all the cuteness, but then everyone's starting to get sick of it, and they want things to go back to normal. So they do something really disgusting in hopes that it'll work. So they figured out that if Dot ate something adorably cute, and that's what gave her powers. They figured they need to eat something disgusting in order to set the world back to its old self. So they start licking a pigeon, and yeah, pretty gross, but still a pretty funny twist. And but yeah, this show still has a lot of the naughty humor that the original show was known for, and yeah, it surprised me how they are still able to get away with some of this stuff, and it just makes me go like, thank goodness they gave this a PG ratings. It would have sucked to have seen a more toned down version of the original show, but it looks like the writers are trying their best to keep the spirit of the original while still adding some new stuff. And this show still has the unapologetic humor it was known for. It will not apologize for sharing its opinion. I mean, God, this one episode just flat out insulted my home state, Iowa, and all I could say was shake my head in agreement. It's like, darn it, it is so true. And of course, they had to lay on some political jokes about like Trump and stuff like that. And usually when it comes to people making fun of Trump, I get sick of it. But I don't know. I got a laugh out of Animaniacs of all people making fun of them, because they always knew how to just like jab people where they deserve it. And so luckily they don't do it too much. But I mean, there are definitely instances of it. Heck, like in the episode where Dot is turning everything cute, I noticed how there's a part where she quickly transforms Trump into a cute little pig. So, yeah. But then, of course, there's the episode where, like, this is also an episode I really liked, but at the end there's a big Trump jab. But the episode where the Warners are gods, I thought that was a really funny episode. You see them messing with Odysseus, the god of travel and all that. And so, it was really funny. It was like one of those traditional episodes of Animaniacs where it shows like in a historical time you see them messing with a historical figure, except in this case they're not their regular selves. They're actual Greek gods. They have powers, so it's funny to see them like looking down on the world and using their powers to mess with him. I thought that was really creative and funny. I really hope to see more creative episodes like that in the future. And so all the ways they try torturing him just doesn't work. They even tried sending him to hell at one point, and he starts treating it like some game show obstacle course. And so then Dot comes up with what she considers to be the biggest form of torture of all, and that's marooning him on an island with a Cyclops that's a caricature of Donald Trump. And I got a big laugh out of that scene, and I can't believe I'm laughing at a Trump parody. I guess it's better to laugh at it now, though, because we know that jerk is finally out of office. So I guess I'm able to laugh at his misfortunes now. I also forgot to mention how in episode 1, towards the end of the episode, there's a pretty funny song that was basically a song about reboots, and I thought it was funny to see all the reboots they mentioned that have happened over the years. And I mean, they even poke out like, That's So Raven, Full House, DuckTales, even Looney Tunes themselves. And I don't know, I just thought that was a really funny song segment. It really felt like it belonged in the original show. Also, during the part in episode 1 where Yakko drinks the tablet and starts learning everything, you see like all the images popping into his head, and if you pause for a minute, you'll definitely notice some funny images there. So one of them is Barack Obama becoming president, and the funniest one is one of the last ones, and it's a real easy to miss one, but So the last one is a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade float of SpongeBob wearing a Santa hat, and I don't know why, I just couldn't believe they somehow snuck that in there. It's like, don't tell Viacom, they'll get mad. So overall, I really enjoyed this return. I definitely look forward to the next season. I hope we get more than that, because, um, yeah, it's like as soon as it was over, it's like, darn. It's like that's the same feeling I had when I binged through the original series. I wanted more, and um, yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this reboot. It's just so funny how this is on a Disney streaming service, Hulu for. It makes me wonder if HBO Max was going to try to fight to buy this show or something. I don't know, but that would just feel really awkward, though. How if you only had like the first season or two exclusive to Hulu, but then all of a sudden it's on HBO Max. But hey, it happened before Tiny Toons, though. They used to. I can't remember their original channel, but I know they were eventually bought out by Fox, which was also the birthplace of Animaniacs. And so Animaniacs, it definitely had some. This new version of Animaniacs definitely had some cynical humor towards its past. I mean, you'll definitely see it make fun of Fox in certain ways, just like they did in the old days. And they even seem to make fun of Warner Brothers at times. For instance, the writers of the original Animaniacs, although they weren't really in the show, it definitely felt like the writers felt their pain. The new writers felt the pain of the old writers. So, for instance, how Warner Bros. Was constantly pushing for them to add a third character in Pinky and the Brain. So, like, we've seen jokes at this. Well, we've seen jabs at this, like in the episode Pinky, the Brain, and Larry, where they added a third character that no one wanted, and eventually, it was poking fun at how the show just wouldn't work with a third character. And then, of course, the infamous Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain. Yeah, that was a pretty awkward, unasked for spinoff. And so there's a running gag in some of the Pinky and the Brain skits. It happens at least 3 times in this show, where for a brief moment you see how there's a third lab rat character, and right away he gets killed off. It's like whether he's used for an experiment and never seen again, or he just gets eaten by like a barracuda or something. It's like, yeah, it's like there's a funny joke where it starts off or ends with them with a third character, and the third one just gets killed off, and it's just a really funny gag. It's like, yeah, they're still not letting that go. They know Pinky and the Brain can only work with 2 main characters, and they even make fun of yeah, just like everything else, they even make fun of Warner Bros. Failures. I hope the Tiny Toons reboot doesn't fail either. I mean, it was great to just see cameos of those characters in this as well. But, well, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Have a nice day.